Music is coming on.
Sweet.
That's better. Have you paid the royalties to use Raspberry Beret?
I have to pay them monthly. No, I'll get a slap in the hand from Facebook though.
I was a bit too leisurely.
We're playing the entire song.
Yeah.
So he really wants to get sued.
All right, here comes Shira. And then we'll go live right after that. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in once again to the Sarasota Improv Festival online. My name is Will Luera. I'm the Director of Improvisation here at Florida Studio Theater. I hope everyone is doing well. Thank you so much for your support throughout the weekend. We've had workshops and interviews and shows, and we have a few more things lined up for today. In a second, we'll be starting up our next interview of this 3-hour block. Right after this one, we'll be interviewing Michelle Gilliam from the new Improv MKE in Milwaukee, and then we're gonna have an all-star jam at 4 o'clock. We're gonna get now this next interview that we're about to do. So this group, we were actually the plan was, during the while we were still going to do our festival live, we were going to do a reunion show with these with this team and get them all together to perform for the weekend. And the group, I have a long-standing relationship with these folks. I first met them over 20 years at this point, I think like 21, 22 years ago, when a group of us from Boston went down to do a 2-day intensive with them. And I could confidently say that this group changed the course of my career during that weekend. And so I'm very honored that I've been able to get a number of the founders here together today. So I'm going to invite them here to the Zoom stage. Let's hear it for the members and founders of Burn Manhattan. All right, come on out, fellas. Yes. Woo.
Woo.
Yeah, excellent. Hello.
Jay was in witness relocation, as is Shira.
Yes.
Thanks for having us, Will.
I hope Shira's voice is distorted as well. I worked with this group.
Oh, so awesome to have you all here. Thank you so much. I don't think I ever met Shira, but during the weekend of the festival, you were always talking about Shira. Not the festival, I'm sorry, the weekend of the intensive that we took, you were always talking about Shira. So it
was in our rider.
So it was a bunch of us who took that workshop, and I wish I could find there's a picture of us all together after the last workshop, or the last class, which I think was with Todd, if I remember correctly. The last one of that weekend was with Todd. And Kevin, did you share the notes I took from that weekend?
Yeah, I did. I'm not sure I sent it to everybody.
Yeah, because I still
you sent half to me, like every other word.
Yeah.
So it became a game.
Yeah, Will still had his notes. from
Yeah.
that workshop.
Yeah.
Sent that.
I
I'll look
think
for it
I
right
have
now.
my notes from that workshop.
I eventually it was originally all written down. Then I ended up putting it, typing it all up, and now it's just saved as a Google Doc somewhere. But that's how important that weekend was for a bunch of us. So thank you all for being here. Thank you. Well, let's do quick intros around. Maybe where you're at, what you're doing right now. Let's start with Kevin.
Oh boy, I'm on a Zoom call with you.
Thank
I don't
you.
know how specific you wanted me to be.
I
Yeah,
haven't
I'm
seen you
in New
since.
York. I'm in New York, and
Awesome.
I'm still improvising with Jay and Matt Higgins, who were in Bergen, Manhattan,
Cool.
and we also have Patrick McCartney, who's with us, and a few
Mhm.
other guests that swing in from time to time. Still doing it. Still doing the same stuff.
Awesome.
That's
Thank
it.
you.
I wish I
Thank
had
you.
more to tell you.
Last time I saw you, we had just seen a Panto show in London.
In London, yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess I
Yes.
should say I'm on the international circuit a bit. I try to go to Europe a couple times a year and
Yeah.
improvise there and hang out with cool people at Panto shows.
How many times have I said that?
Right?
Thank you, Kevin. Todd Rocksteady.
I'm living in Los Angeles right now, like everyone else, working from home. I'm currently working on writing a video game project and working on an interactive project. Not a lot of acting available since they shut down the industry. So kind of waiting for that to bubble back to the surface. So hanging with the family, trying to enjoy the sunshine in the summer, playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
Nice. Thank you, Todd. Jay.
Thanks for having us, Will. I'm going to try and one up Todd on the microphone placement in the frame there. I am nice going, Will. I bow before your Yeti, which is certainly the sign of a good weekend for you and me. I am in Brooklyn right now. Kevin, are you still Kevin?
I'm here. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me well.
There's a little sight line.
Actually, I'm a boom operator, but he's 6 feet away and masked.
And the unions are sitting this out right now.
So yes,
Are completely offline.
yeah, they're working it out.
I'm in Brooklyn, Will. It's great to see you. And I'm still
First time caller, long time fan.
I'm looking for you to play Midnight in the Garden of Fun.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit more application of this stuff to corporate and organizational groups, but I'm still enjoying being ridiculous with Kevin and Matt and Patrick, and when I can with Todd. And it's great to be here. And I hope you're doing well down there and keeping safe.
Yeah. We're about to. I was just telling Kevin before we started. We're close to, or at least the government's not going to tell us anything here, unfortunately. So I think as a family, we're going to choose to re-quarantine very soon, or take some steps in that direction.
Good.
Here comes Matt now, and Shira, how are you?
Unmute.
Good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for doing this, and it's always good to see these guys. Hi, guys.
Hi.
There's Matt.
He's putting on a shirt for you.
What?
Matt's putting on a shirt for you.
I usually do these bare chested, but I thought, no, not today.
Cool. Welcome, Matt. I'm just having everyone just going around the circle. Just a quick little intro. Where you at? What you doing? So, Matt, you're up.
Hi, my name is Matt Higgins, and I am in New York City, way uptown, and I'm just chilling out. Just chilling out. Can everybody hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. It sounds great.
Yep.
Great.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm just
awesome.
chilling out, doing my thing, trying to, be creative during this challenging time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so it's so great to see all of you here. Already, right off the bat, a few comments. Dana Schulman, who's out of New York, screaming via Messenger, Centralia, Kevin is my hero. Jay, it is not my so secret dream to sit in with Centralia. She follows that up with. She's you have a very excited fan here. But at the top of this, at the intro, I started by saying how much of an effect Burn Manhattan as a group had on me and my improv career. I could probably I look back at I think we all have those formative years as improvisers. Mine was around 98 to 2001. Took a bunch of different workshops with a bunch of different people. But the Burn Manhattan one is the one that kind of just, if my career was going in a certain direction, the Burn Manhattan one is that kind of pushed it in a certain way. And there was just a lot of things that came out of that workshop. I'll remember one thing. I have so many memories, but there's one, and this was Todd. You were teaching. I think you were teaching the singing part of that weekend, like some sort of musical part. One of you, somebody was doing a musical part of that.
Mark
Might have been
Levinson might have
Levinson.
been. Yeah, Mark
Levinson, okay, or maybe Todd, you were sitting
my
in on
God.
it, maybe with us. Somebody,
Yeah,
I remember
yeah.
Levinson was there. Levinson was playing, but one of you was there also,
Uh-huh.
and I was always afraid of singing. And then one of you just said, one of you just pushed me to just embrace that fear, and then to just start to sell it to the room. And I just remember like that stepping into the fear moment, and just to start. And again, it was just a musical part, but it like changed my improv DNA at that moment to just.
Well, I'm not sure who that could have been. It might have been me. It might have been gay.
But that's exactly what happened. No, thank you. Yeah, Matt. It was just such a powerful moment. And anyways, that whole weekend was so powerful. Could somebody? I want to learn more about Burn Manhattan. And I've listened to some of the podcasts recently. But whose brainchild was it?
Todd.
So
Todd.
I was living with Kevin and Renee at the time in our railroad apartment in
Hell's
we
Kitchen.
were in Hell's Kitchen, yeah, and literally was like, well, I'm in New York, and we are now officially the surviving members of Burn Manhattan. But John Teese, who recently passed, he was also just moved from Chicago, and he and I were talking, and Kevin and I were talking, and we're like, well, we're here. And, we're addicts when it comes to improvisation. We're always going to try and figure out how to do it. And we were just figuring out what we want to do. And oddly, it started in the negatives. We knew what we didn't want to do. We didn't want to take suggestions, and we didn't want to do short form. So at least we knew what to avoid. And I was, my girlfriend, now my wife, was sitting next to me, or we were probably a futon on the floor. But I remember literally seeing the like 5 guys in suits holding torches, and then the words Burn Manhattan came in, and I walked into the kitchen and I said to Kevin, Burn Manhattan. And it'll be like a slash and burn, kind of a punk rock.
And then I
take on
ran
improv.
right out the door with a can of gasoline.
Yeah, he started fires.
It was a mess. And then Todd said, no, it's the name of an
It's the name of
improv.
an improv show. It
And
wasn't
I said,
Last
that
something
makes
you
sense.
could have used that can of gasoline for that you had sitting around. At last.
just in the middle of the living room.
Right.
So then I called.
It was the 90s, guys. It was the
It
90s.
was 95, late 95, early 96. And I called Adam McKay at the time, who was touring with us at Second City before I moved to LA, or before I moved to New York. Adam was in the touring company with me, and I called him because he had a sensibility of what I was looking for, but he was obviously neck deep in SNL at the time, and he knew this lovely lady who said, look, I know exactly who you need to talk to, Shira Piven. And I've obviously had heard of Shira and the family and the work that they were doing in Chicago, coming up through the Chicago improv scene. And so then he connected me with Shira. Shira and I had lunch. Kevin connected to Jay and Matt. I'm sure he's got a better story to that than I just
Now,
had.
that is the whole story from my perspective. I connected Jay and Matt.
Yeah, Jay and Matt, he did. He connected us to Jay and Matt, and then John and Levy I knew from Chicago. I knew Kevin from Chicago, and then Shira said this. You were already working with a group of improvisers, if I was not mistaken.
I
Shira.
was.
Yeah,
The
and
White
you're like,
Horse.
yeah, I'm not. I don't know if I want to keep going with this. You weren't even sure you wanted to keep teaching an improv or working with improvisers at the moment. You were like, I don't know, because I'm not sure if you were having a good time working with that group you were working with at the time. But
It was a disaster.
It was a disaster.
No, I was working with this improv group, and we had kind of brought it was sort of, I don't even know. They were like, sure, we're adventurous, we want to do some experimental stuff. And then I got this call, and at one point, and they were like, we just kind of want to be like the improv. This is the line I remember. We just kind of want to be like the improv group Coffee and Donuts. And like, I didn't really know who Coffee and Donuts were, but one thing I did know is that they were the cheesiest brand of improv that I didn't want to be doing. And they clearly were like, we don't get you. We don't want to do weird stuff. We don't want to change the old school, like, short forms thing. So I was like, okay, good. Let's not do this anymore.
There's a guy watching, slowly taking off his Coffee and Donuts shirt.
And then you called me, and I was a little gun shy about the whole thing, because I was pretty new to New York, and I felt comfortable right away. I'd been born in New York. I lived there till I was about 6 years old. I still, like, in my heart, felt like this is my home in some way, even though I'd left when I was a kid. My parents were like transplanted Chicago, New York theater. My mom was a transplanted Chicago and New York theater person. My dad grew up in Pennsylvania, and then they were like New York theater people. So I felt really at home in New York. And then this experience with that group was not, just kind of didn't click. So I kind of was like, all right, let's sort of see how this goes. And my expectations were like that what I was going to offer to you guys was like, you were going to think like, this is too weird. I don't know. We don't want to do this. And here we are, like, what, 20 some years later? It's crazy. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah. So, just the 20 some years later is that you guys are still working together, which is amazing. But what I love was it was so I sort of think of it as less punk rock and more a dash of punk rock thrown in, but sort of like the what do you call it, like the Globe Theater version of improvisation. Like, it's not, I was really,
were called as freeform Dadaists.
Freeform Dadaist. I like that. That's better than anything. I had a real snobby relationship with the quote unquote improv scene, which I'm not proud of, but my background was like a weird mix of like method acting and intense Viola Spolin originated theater games. And my parents were studied with Viola Spolin and Paul Sills. And so they were kind of like, their lives were changed by this deep ensemble work. And so it just kind of like turned everything they knew about acting on its head, and, make the other person look good, find that group mind that transcends one person's contribution. So it's, and I directed a lot of straight theater, and I had also just done a lot of experimenting with long form improv. And these guys were game, and it was so fun to work with everyone.
3 months, leotards, hula hoops, and Shira played a recorder off to the side. That's it. She wouldn't even talk to us for 3 months.
I wouldn't. I would sometimes just do headstand.
Yeah, headstand in the corner.
Oh, Shira, thank you so much for that that added detail to the history. You bringing up viola. I've found recently, because of a byproduct of the current civil rights movement that we're going through, there's been sort of an embracing of a lot of Viola Spolin's work. Like, I've seen a lot of improvisers sort of going back to
Wow.
that because of the ensemble aspect of it, right? That you're speaking to, and I've always. I mean, for the last few years, especially, I reread one of the books, right? Whether it was like exercises for the classroom or something, but there was something that I reread in the last couple of years, and I was just like, whoa, there's something. When I was a younger improviser, I feel like I just skipped over this because of some sort of, I was an arrogant young improviser, but now I'm going back to it. I'm like, there's so much here to embrace and to re-explore, and so I've been, and to now see other improvisers starting to embrace it as well has been it's been great because it is so powerful. I grew up in Chicago. I grew up about a mile away from the Hull House, and I remember going there when I was in 8th grade, and just to know that the number of the history of improv that happened in that place, right, is great. I have a couple of I have so many things. I'm trying to see what I want to go through next. One thing is I do want to do eventually in the next 40 minutes or so is to go back into the career. I have my notes from that workshop, that 10-hour workshop. I'd love to go through it with you guys to see what you remember about yourselves from that workshop. But I also I want to talk a little bit about this. So the term freeform. So when I teach, I use that term freeform, and I'm pretty sure I grabbed it when I was with you guys. Where did it come from before that? Or did it start with you? Did that idea of freeform start
That's a
with
good
you?
question. We didn't really decide what our form was going to be. I have been in a group in Chicago. We were called Bang Bang. We actually performed at the Hull House. It was a highlight of my improv career. Anyway, what we were calling it spontaneous theater, partially out of branding, because everyone was doing long form improv comedy. And we had a lot of actors who maybe were afraid of the word comedy, right? Or the expectation of comedy. So we just called it spontaneous theater and allowed for moments of drama and darkness and some crazy stuff. It was a real experiment. In Chicago, you got the Second City and you've got sort of the Steppenwolf Goodman theater. There's very serious American theater and very silly American theater. And we sort of consciously tried to blend those two things using the tools of, acting tools you would use in rehearsal, from both worlds, method stuff and then Second City stuff, improv stuff. And we never really understood that you could have a form. So we never really named it. There was never a name to the shape. We were just sort of going up and starting. And then it ended at the hour when the lights went off. And so that was one of the seeds, because Todd had done a show or two with us in Chicago before we came out. And that's one thing we sort of talked about is, what did you guys do? That group was called Bang Bangs. And what was Bang Bangs form? And we're like, I don't know when we labeled it freeform or ever said freeform, and it was really then working with Shira that we sort of figured out our form, which wasn't a form, wasn't a shape. It was just a way to get from scene to scene to scene, dipping back into that Spolin mirror transformation.
And heralds.
Organic.
We did some heralds.
We did do some heralds. Todd knew the herald very well, and we talk about sort of seeing the map, the topography.
I still
of the
don't
herald.
understand how to do a herald. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not
You
joking.
never needed to. It wasn't important. It was very much like, I think our process was very much like that old children's story Stone Soup, where everybody would just bring something to rehearsal or bring an idea to the rehearsal and then throw it in the kettle. And I think what we consciously chose to do was let our influences not be, and again, this does sound sort of haughty, but it just comes from was in Chicago for 6 years and that sort of fascism of community. I just mean everybody sort of holding each other in the same place. And so the work tends to become a bit homogenized. There were always outliers and interesting people doing interesting things. UCB, when they were in Chicago, were really just pushing envelopes and stuff. But I think we chose to consciously not look at other improv as our influences. We chose to look at other theatrical traditions. Now, I had gone to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and I saw this group called Rejects Revenge, and they were very much European-based, devised physical theater, physical comedy theater. And so they were doing a lot of the creating of their environments with their bodies, their visual effects, repetition of words, the structure. And I was just riveted with their work and slowly just suckerfished myself onto them to bleed them of any and all information. Because I wanted my improvised work to look like their scripted work. And so I picked their brains quite a bit.
Todd, you had a show that inspired me a few years after I was at Burn Manhattan, and I think I saw you at maybe the Chicago Improv Festival. I think it was at a festival, and it came out of your theater. Was it the Hot House in L.A.? You had a show with a bunch of like ghosts.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Doubtful Guests. Yeah,
Yes,
that actually came out of the Bang Improv Studio in Hollywood,
okay.
Peter Murrieta's studio. And that was done with a bunch of those. And enough New Yorker was in that as well, Jason Addis.
Okay.
But yeah, and that actually was a response to having done Burn Manhattan for years. I'm like, well, again, I don't want to repeat what I've already done, because who would want to keep putting on a black suit and white shirt and doing show for 25?
Oh, Todd, we're still. Never mind.
No, but just the idea of like, once
Not a
again,
big deal.
taking another thing that influenced me. And I had seen this show called Shock-Headed Peter that the Tiger Lilies had scored. And it was this tremendous gothic, just macabre, almost guignol stories. And I thought, well, what if my improv show could look like that? Matt actually performed with us in that show in LA a number of years ago and had a blast.
Nice. I just hearing you guys talk, I hope I make you guys proud. In the workshops I teach, when I try to teach this style, one thing I do is we don't use traditional improv warm-ups at the top of our classes. I ask the group, I'm like, you have to make up your own improv warm-ups at the beginning of each class, and you could never use those warm-ups again. Like, that's it. Like, whatever you do week one, whatever we make up on the spot, we throw them away, and then week two, it frightens them, because they're like, wait, so by the end of these 8 weeks, we're going to have 24 original warm-up games. And I'm like, that's the goal. And like the second weekend, they're like, I don't know how we're going to do this, but they get through it. All 8 weeks, they come up with 24 original warm-up games. Yeah, and I ask them to you have to get used to just throwing it away, and we're not going to see it again. I do whenever I'm traveling. I put an asterisk. I'm like, okay, if you really like it, you could do it again, but not while I'm here. Like, once I leave, you could do it again. Cool. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and same thing with the shows. I asked my cast. I'm like, we can't. If something really worked in a show, and you're like, wow, that was amazing, then I'm like, okay, that's it. That's great. It was amazing, but we're not that move. We're not going to try to recreate that.
You are way more disciplined than I am, Will. That is impressive. Because if I've gone to the well of the puffed up Southern senator once, I've done it 1,000 times.
Oh, you sure have. You sure have, JD.
I'm reclaiming my time. I'm reclaiming my.
No, I want to.
Nothing wrong with having a repertoire.
Shira said it. That makes it true.
That's right.
But the thing, Tom, that's interesting what you said, because I don't remember that group you were talking about that influenced you, but they were scripted?
Rejects Revenge. It was Tim Hibbard. You remember Tim?
Yeah, kind of. I
So
remember
Tim Hibbard's group, I had gone to Scotland with Second City in '95, the summer before I moved to New York. And they had done this amazing show called The Pea Super. And actually, if you remember, we then, a number of years later, I kept in contact with those guys, and Tim came out, was paid by his country, by the way, because that's how that works, because they care about the arts. They funded him with a grant to come to New York and drink a lot of whiskey. No, he come to New York and teach us classes and take classes with us. Yeah.
It was pretty great.
that's amazing. Yeah, because it makes sense. Because the stuff that I was bringing to you guys, and probably came out of our conversations to some extent, the stuff that I was bringing to you guys that I was sort of amazed that you were like, yeah, let's do this, was just the highly physical stuff. And so you had a frame of reference for that. And then like Matt was kind of a performance artist. and John had more traditional Second City stuff in his background, and Kevin had come from Bang Bang. And Jay, remind me what your improv back. You were a theater guy, right?
I was
You
someone
found him
else
in an
was
ad.
auditioning, and I walked in his place. No, I came out of Meisner traditional acting approach, and so that whole first year is repetition and improvisation.
Yeah.
Did you meet
Jay,
Kevin?
you did
Did you meet Jay in that Ralph Buckley show?
Yes, here's how that, I'll give you the quick Matt and Jay story. Matt and I met doing Stone Soup, the play. Yes, for kids at a theme park in Pennsylvania called Sesame Place. And Matt was already doing stand-up comedy at like 20 years old in Philadelphia. And I had been doing that. And there was a few other people. A young man named Adam McKay was doing stand-up in Philly. And there was a group called Gus with Rick Roman and Paul F. Tompkins. That's irrelevant to the story, but these are guys that like sort of came back up in Chicago and stuff. Anyway, we started doing stand-up together, Matt and I. And basically it was sketch. We didn't know it was called sketch. We were doing two-person things. I would be a stand-up comedian and Matt would be in the audience interrupting my act. And that was basically our act. Then I went to Chicago, learned the Second City stuff. I actually learned how to do this stuff. And then when I was visiting New York one day and actually ran into Matt on the street on 8th Avenue by the Port Authority. I'm not going to say what he was doing there. It was the 90s. Okay. Got to make a buck any way we can.
Pay my rent, man.
And I was like, wait a minute, I'm taking a random trip to New York and I run into Matt Higgins? Like, what are the odds? I'm like, I love this town. So I made plans to move to New York then and hang out with Matt. And Matt was kind of a big deal in the New York comedy scene at that time.
You took me to see him at Baby Jupiter.
Yes. It was
and you
like
did this thing, you did this PowerPoint presentation where everything, the top of the pyramid was Barbara Streisand.
He was Dick Shaft.
Yeah, Dick Shaft.
That was the character's name.
And you would give people little plastic toys from your pocket.
Yeah.
It was very Kaufman. It was very wonderful.
Insane. But
that's when I met Matt.
So Matt was working with Ralph Buckley, who had taken over classes from David Shepard, who was one of the founders of the Second City and Compass. And that was called Just Say Yes. And Matt said Ralph was putting together a Second City style political show that we're going to write through improv. And I said, of course, I'll audition. And then that's where we met Jay. I was doing Bob Dole, it was the 90s, and Jay was doing Bill Clinton. And we were having so much fun in the rehearsals, improvising to write the sketch. We were having more fun doing the improv. And around the same time, Todd was like, put down the can of gasoline. It's the name of the thing. And I said, I know a couple of guys because it's the 90s. We can only have white men in this group. Let's do that. I mean, really, we wanted women. We wanted people of color, but the rules were. Like I go, I'm kidding.
Enter Kate, she said.
Yes, and then Kate was with us pretty soon after, and then Spencer. But anyway, that's how we were just sort of like, hey, we like being with each other. Let's fool around. We spent as little money as we could rehearsing in apartments and rooftops and the cheapest spaces we can find, basically condemned buildings. and that's that.
So I am going to share a screen here. Let's see. Let's take a look at these notes. Let's see, where are we? Oops. There we go. Hold on. This right? No, that's not it. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. There we go. There we go. There we go.
There we go.
So
This folder.
So this is the group that I was a part of. We were called Sitcom. We did improvise sitcoms, but this was our notes. Now, I highlighted this because there's a quote from John that came out from that right here. And I think it talks a little bit to what we've been already discussing. And by the way, anybody who's watching, these notes are available for anyone, if with the permission, of course, of Burn Manhattan.
I'll just send you my PayPal.
Okay, good. And well, you could pay Todd directly.
This is the only thing documented, by the way, of our history. This is it.
So this is the first one right here. Jaunties, we did Transformation in Space. That was the very first part here. And all of these like have stayed with me to this day. All these like exploring the object, passing the object, mirror, complementary mirror, near mirror, follow the follower. Then came up Jay Roderick, where we did folk style characters in Commedia. This was such an effective part as well. This was so the idea of archetypes, which still stays with me to this day, Jay. I thought was so.
Kira
so
brought that
effective.
to the table, and and we all just like gobbled it up.
Yeah.
It was great.
We also worked, in addition to Shira's tutelage on this, we worked with a guy named Christopher Bays, who to this day is one of the ace Commedia directors and visionaries in the country. He's, if anyone listening has a chance to do a Christopher Bays, Bayes workshop on this, or his partner Virginia, please do. It's a mind blower and it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'll remember from that workshop we did with you, Jay. Yeah, this just playing the way you challenged us and pushed us to use our bodies in different ways, like from Capitano and Arlecchino. And I just remember like me thinking, wait a minute, we're not just two people on stage talking and looking at each other, or one sitting and one standing, or both sitting. Like to use our bodies in these different ways was just amazing. So let's see. Oh yeah, the arêtes, right? Is that what it's called? Is that the one with the curtain or the door?
Yeah.
Like you come in, right? Oh, that was so great. Oh, awesome. Then Kevin Scott, narrative and story approaches. Still Mission Impossible, Slacker, which we do a lot of. Matt Higgins, movement and ritual. Yeah, and then Todd Sasher, theater and other styles. And then a lot of little tips. I think Todd, from yours, you said just a lot of very memorable things, which I ended up bullet pointing here. A lot of really good takeaways for us.
Well, again, Don't Burn Your Steps came from Shira's Commedia stuff, and I think I just took that beautiful concept and really applied it, because that's such a great concept about do what you're doing right now. Don't play the next moment, which is such a great lesson for acting, for writing. It's about exploration and living in mental health. Yeah, living in the moment. And then there's this great Chaplin film that I always highlight when I talk about it called 1 a.m. It's a Chaplin film short, and he's not playing the tramp. He's just playing this rich man drunk coming home at night at 1 a.m. and letting himself in the door. And there's this great moment where he can't find his key, and he's looking for his key, and then he notices that the window is cracked, so he kind of stumbles over the window and he opens it, and he climbs in the window, and he's looking for a place to put his foot, and I think he puts it in the fishbowl, and then he climbs out, gets into the house, and then finds his key. And then turns around, goes back out the window, goes to the front door to let himself in. It's just mind-blowingly gorgeously crafted, and it's such a lesson in not burning your steps, because he gives each moment its due. When he cycles back through them specifically, the reward from the audience is massive.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think is that like view like. Can I find that online?
Yeah, it's Chaplin Mutuals, and the name of the film is 1 a.m.
1 a.m. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a classic piece of it's a classic piece of physical theater.
I've never seen it. I got to see it. The Commedia thing has been interesting because Tim Robbins, who is the artistic director of the Actors Gang Theater in Chicago, in Los Angeles for many years. He came to Chicago in the late 80s, maybe, and did a workshop with a bunch of us. And it changed the trajectory of most of our theater work and film work in a lot of ways. He had studied with this teacher from France in the style of Commedia dell'arte, and the teacher's name was George Bigot, influenced him so completely that his company still works in this style and does workshops every Sunday in this style. Anyway, it's something I shared with these guys, and then I think, you know, they started, it was like right up Todd's alley, I know, and most of you. And then sounds like you guys took it a step further and then went deeper with this Christopher Bays, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Commedia, the principles of Commedia are just amazing. The don't burn your steps, and
Sincerity.
Sincerity, like that it's both big and sincere at the same time. It's that, like, it can just open you up as an actor. It's like, it's just some of the best training. And when I just always kind of come back to it over and over and over, because it's such an incredible theatrical form and teaching tool. And when I moved to LA in 2003, I directed a show at the Actors Gang, and worked in the Commedia style. And then in a few years later, they founded a prison project, and we started bringing Commedia, and that's sort of where I'm going to. We started bringing this Commedia style to inmates in prisons, and it you know, it sounds insane. And my husband Adam was like, kind of didn't say anything, but he was like, that sounds really crazy. But we have like an invited audience that we would do a final workshop, and I kind of forced him to come at one point, and he was like, I thought this was the craziest thing I'd ever heard of. I didn't know how it was going to work, but it really works. And what it does for inmates is, because we work with the 4 states: anger, fear, happiness, and sadness, which, as for my money, you could throw out all of Commedia and this is the form that Tim go. You could throw out the rest of it. The stock characters are cool, but these 4 emotional states are incredibly valuable tools for actors and for non-actors. And for inmates, it started to change their relationship with their emotional life in a way that they were like, you know, I'm sure they didn't have good therapy, but they were like, this is better. This is better than my therapy. This is better than other forms of, you know, rehabilitation, because they got to know and be less afraid of their emotions. And I just think, yeah, coming back to improv, it's an incredible improv tool that you can take almost any theater game and infuse anger, fear, happiness, and sadness with, as Kevin said, sincerity. But you could go as big as you want or as small as you want, as long as you're in a state and sincere. But in Commedia, you're pushed to go really, really big. But you can infuse the states into any game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. There's a book that I'm sort of trying to look for on my bookshelf, but it's called The Body Keeps Score, and it's in that book, the writer talks about exactly what you're talking about how theater, and he says improvisation specifically really can, you know, a lot of times maybe talking about something might not necessarily work, but like when we can be just expressive and you know, maybe we're inhibited to share our emotions in real life, but when we are fully stated, you know, doing Commedia or whatever, then we have this outlet to sort of to emote and to practice emoting and stuff, and to sort of try that on, and sort of accessing our emotions that way. It's one of the things I really love about Larry Grimm was also someone, Cheer, that you brought in to do a Commedia workshop with us. I remember doing one for a weekend with Larry, and for me, one of the things I love about Commedia is that just the stakes are so high over something really insignificant, like being like grief-stricken over the loss of a flower petal or a speck of dust. And I just love that. It's just so much fun to
Or spilling the spilling the salt, or
yeah,
getting
exactly.
the button wrong.
Why? Why?
Yeah, exactly. Exact sincerity, Kevin. Sincerity.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
You just reminded me when Cher said "get the button wrong," because I just want to include this moment because we talk about object work and creating a reality. And John Teese was he was a maestro at his object work and connecting to space, and his object work would have a character life of its own. And one of the things that I remember him doing while he was having a conversation is he would be buttoning up his shirt and then just notice that the button was wrong and have to undo it and then rebutton up. But that had nothing to do with the scene at hand. It was just such a grace note of character.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to derail you, Matt. Sorry, that just
no. I agree. I describe John's object work and just his physicality on stage as being elegant. Like he was just, there was something so elegant about.
He was elegant. He was very elegant. Yeah.
But yeah, so he one thing that John really influenced me with was the dressing up your character. Like I remember doing this whole very long exercise with him where we just dressed up our character, put it like we're looking in a mirror, putting on a hat and just kind of finding this character and then just sort of walking around like just dressed up. It was really fun.
It's sort of saying what Todd was saying. We all brought stuff to the table. We literally would teach each other stuff we knew. Like we would run workshops with each other in whatever disciplines that we knew that the others didn't, which was a great way to build ensemble and to have a cross section of experiences and knowledge about the work. Is that we all sort of took responsibility to teach each other what we knew. So we had a much larger pool, right? So you're not just relying on the person who's really good at one thing to always do that thing, but we could all have sort of matching skills and be able to jump into stuff 100% when the opportunity arose. Like if a comedian moment came up, we all now knew how to do it and go into it.
Right. Yeah, just rereading that and those notes, I'm surprised at how many of those nuggets in there are still a big part, sort of like some of the many of the pinnings of what I still teach today. One of the things that I saw there was heighten the very first thing, right? And there was one thing that never clicked with me in other schools of improv where you had to kind of look for something to heighten.
Yeah, it's
right?
funny. We talk about, a lot of people talk about find the game of the scene, find the game of the scene. What's the game of the scene? And then I said, that's like lighting a match to look for fire. Like, where's fire? There's got to be fire around here somewhere. There's got to be fire. We talk about the minute something occurs on stage, it is part of the scene and it is a building block to which to build from. I often refer to it as footprints in the snow. If you want to know where the scene is going, look where it's been and then just dig into that more until it transforms. Yes.
That's exactly it. You articulated it far better than I could, Todd. And that because I remember during that time, the whole idea of like finding the game of the scene, I was processing that at the same time that I took the workshop with you guys. And the way you said it just hit me. And again, like it was that ping that took my career.
We were never using that idea because that was a very Second City Improv Olympic concept is the game of the scene, and I think we were just discovering things organically, looking for patterns, listening to each other, mirroring what the other did, and then that would give the scene shape, knowing that the scene would probably have to have a turn because otherwise it's not done. Like there's no discovery or exploration if it stays the same throughout the whole thing. But we were never concerned about finding the game. We just were trying to stay wide awake to see what the others were doing.
At its most reductive, looking for the game is entering a state of judgment, right? This is not the game. This is not the game. This is not the game. And it's in opposition of just saying yes and embracing what you have. There, I hear Shira's voice in my head often with a specific phrase. It's about the blanket. You guys won't remember this moment. We were doing a scene. We had broken into an old apartment we weren't allowed in anymore. We've been evicted, and Matt was doing a scene.
That's not the scene. That was reality.
That was reality, yeah. And so we were rehearsing in this old apartment, and Matt was doing something with a blanket. I don't know if he was waking up. There's something about a blanket, and I remember the moment Shira just said, "It's about the blanket." And in my head, I was like, I do not want to see a scene about a blanket. I'm interested in how can we change the world? This must be about injustice. And so Matt concentrated on the blanket, ended up being a hilarious, wonderful scene. And like a light went off that has not gone out since then, that it is about the blanket. And I have to remind myself, because I still want to, change the world through funny skits and songs, and have to remind myself to just concentrate on the blanket.
That's cool. That's really cool. It's about the blanket.
Yeah, you weren't. It was specifically there was a blanket in the scene. You weren't like.
I
trying
don't
to
remember,
make an
but I
improv
can
note,
imagine.
Yeah.
I could imagine then the scene that emerges from the blanket, which could be a really profound scene, and the thing you guys were saying about finding the game, that's another thing. Like, I don't know the Herald. I don't really know that either. Like, I didn't learn that, but
And that was to our benefit.
Yeah.
The fact that you were bringing in a completely fresh approach. Now, we had a lot, like some of us had that stuff drilled into us in Chicago,
right.
and we're unlearning it, untying ourselves from it.
Yeah, and also, but because my first thought was like finding the game is exactly what we were doing, but not finding the game in the sense of like, this isn't good, this isn't it, this isn't it, this isn't it, we got to find it. It's like it was finding the game with whatever was in front of you and heightening it and exploring and heightening it.
It's more like make the game. Like see what you have and use it until it is the game.
Yeah, so when I do the make up your own warm up games, that exactly is it for me. I'm like, somebody do something, do anything, and then somebody just repeat that, and let's just keep repeating it until something fun is going to start to come out of that, and then we come up with a little warm up game. Somebody commented on the thread. This is Casey Beeler. If you guys know, she's an improviser out of Boston. I love that. She says, yes, love that about heightening. Someone asked me how I find the game when that comes up, and I didn't have an answer because it's not conscious. It's about natural discovery for me as well, she's saying.
I love that. Natural discovery, right on.
Yeah, she says she agreed with something else. She said, yes, sometimes you got to unlearn your training. I want to show you guys something. Well, if you've seen me a little bit distracted, it's because I've been sending my daughter to look through old photo albums, and like I kind of gave her a range. I'm like, thankfully I have everything sort of organized by date. So I just said, I'm like, I have a bunch of photo albums. Go look for them through these dates. So she's been bringing them over, and I found a picture. So I'm just gonna try to bring it up here. Here we go. Let's see. Wait. Hold on, wait. Let me turn off this filter.
We get to see where you live.
There's just a raging fire behind him.
Here is Kevin burning Manhattan. No, here we go. Wow. So that's the workshop. That's the group that I took with me to take that workshop.
Can you post that?
Yeah, I can post that. But it's not all of you guys are there, but there's some familiar faces. And I believe this must have been after the second day, because that's Mark, right? Mark with the white shirt.
Yep.
And then there's Ty. Yeah. So this must have been after the second day of workshops. Yeah, I'll make sure to post this.
Well, I'm impressed that you have so much saved and organized and you can access it so quickly.
I do have a little bit of OCD, and I am a little bit. I'm not somebody refined this for me yesterday, and I appreciate it. I am not a hoarder, but I am a collector.
Yeah.
And so I do like to be able to access things quickly. And I am a super fan of Burn Manhattan. So
I still have this, which was a wedding present from Shira and Adam.
What?
Really?
What?
Yep. You guys gave this to me on my wedding day.
Is that Farrah Fawcett?
It's Farrah Fawcett on a pencil.
Oh
As
my
my
God.
as my bride walks in. Saying, hi, everybody.
Hi.
Uh,
Aw.
Hi,
She was there since the beginning as well.
I have an
Charity,
interesting
she's
doubling
exactly
effect
the same.
in the frame now.
She can't hear you guys because
Oh,
you guys
right.
are in my.
Tell her she looks exactly the same.
What do I know?
She says you look exactly the same.
well,
But
That's
yes,
Farrah.
so this
I
was a
don't
wedding
remember
present.
that bobblehead thing.
Yeah, I was at I got married in Times Square, and then the reception was held at the Italian restaurant I was working
I
at.
remember.
And then Adam goes, "Oh, we got you something." And then across the table, he hands me this, and it sits in my office as a totem of power.
Yeah, we were all so broke that was like,
Yeah. But I've hung on to it for this long. Yeah. But I don't have any photos of these knuckleheads.
Yeah.
But I have a Farrah head.
I just got kind of emotional thinking about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
those days, man.
Will,
I
you're
need to
doing
start-
a lot of great work here. Thank you for
oh,
bringing this together and flexing with the with COVID on all of this.
oh, no problem. Thank you, Jay. Thank you all for being able to make some time. This is very, I said at the beginning, it's very special for me to have you all here and to be together again. And, the goal would be that right now in an alternate universe, right now, we would all be at the beach here celebrating a successful festival. But the goal is to make that happen. Hopefully next year we'll make it happen.
But in that alternate universe, the water at the beach might be acid or jello. So we might be in the right universe right now.
That's right. Thank you, Jay. Yes.
Good point, Jay. Good point.
Thanks.
So we
So
thought
we'll-
this was the darkest timeline.
This is not the darkest timeline.
No.
Yeah. Why did we go to the beach with the acid water in that alternate universe?
Major
That's
miss.
smart.
Yeah, Jay, you and Adam have to get together and just talk about worst case scenarios all the time. My head is at one point I was like, I feel like I'm living with Rain Man because I'll just pass through a room and he'll just be like, 500 million cases, 500 million cases.
Our source is the New York Times. Yeah.
Well, Bird Manhattan, it has been a pleasure. Shira, thank you so much for being here. Shira, I did see you do an improv lecture for some festival in New York. I didn't get to actually take the class, but I remember you were running something for. So I got to see you from afar, but running a group exercise. But to actually be in this Zoom room with you and to have you share stories really means a lot. I had more questions regarding some of the folklore, not the folklore, the maybe mythical, outwardly shows that I've heard of about Bird Manhattan, where I've heard tales of shows that you guys have done in unexpected locations that you guys were somehow able to turn into successful shows.
It's all true.
Yeah, I've heard of them, and that could be a whole other Zoom podcast interview because I'd love to hear about that. But you guys have all of you have been such an amazing influence on me, and in turn an influence to many other generations of freeformers. And I always point back to this workshop that I took. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you for everything that you contributed. And I look forward to having you here in person in Sarasota. Thank you for everyone who tuned in. Thank you for your stories and your comments. You've all been, thank you for supporting the Sarasota Improv Festival online this year. We're going to take a half-hour break, and in 30 minutes, we will have an improv interview with Michelle Gilliam from Improv MKE in Milwaukee. Thank you very much, and take care. See ya.